Welcome to The Healthy Hustle, hosted by us. Our hope for this show is to create something we didn't have during the come up. A community that supports a balance of growth and feel good, rush and recharge. The magic is in the dichotomy. And holy smokes, did it take us a long time to figure that out. Learn from our missteps, grow with our advice, because the work doesn't have to hurt. This is The Healthy Hustle.
Welcome to The Healthy Hustle. I'm Mandy Bowles.
And I'm Marybeth Dodd.
Today we are talking about uncertainty and how it's absolutely inevitable. Now, Marybeth, I know we were talking about some observations that you had when we were chatting this morning.
Yeah.
You noticed some really profound things. What's going on?
Well, I just feel like when I see people right now, whether it's in the grocery store or wherever, there is definitely just like a heaviness, and an uncertain sort of feeling. And I recognize that feeling, I think it's somewhere we've all been. And there's such a temptation for us to see it as a negative and to rush through it. But I know what we were talking about earlier is just that it's part of the process,
Yeah.
It's part of what we walk through, and we walk through it in all the ways that we do life, right? We walk through it in family life. We walk through it in business. We certainly walk through it as entrepreneurs in so many ways.
Right. I feel like that's so true. And, I think it's valid because so many people are looking at their professions and thinking, is this profession going to be here in 5 years, 10 years? Am I going to have to pivot? What are things looking like? And sometimes when you want to control everything, always want to control the outcome, that can be a really unsettling time. How do you get through those times?
Oh gosh. I mean, I feel like I am, when I said we want to rush through it, that's like a confession. Mm-hmm. I feel like I do want to rush through it. I hate feeling like I'm waiting. But I know what I've really been learning in recent seasons is that is part of that growing process. As painful as it is, as difficult as it is, sometimes our breakthrough is just on the other side of walking through that muck and mire, to be able to get to where we want to go to. And what's interesting is when I think of our parents' generation, and even maybe a couple before that, it's like they had these long careers. They were working for the same, place many times for 30 years or whatever. They were getting these pensions and they were just hanging out, and doing this whole career. So there was a point where they would retire much earlier, I think, than we retire now, probably early 50s or whatever, many people. And they arrived. That was the goal. They would work till they got to retirement, and then they quote unquote arrived. And I think we really don't have that sort of same, outlook right now, or even opportunity. Most of us do not work at a job that long and then retire. On a side note, I think retirement is a big lie anyway, because some of our best years are after those ages and our most influential years. But I just think it's really different now,
Yeah, I think it's really different. I think entrepreneurship plays a whole other role in it. And you look at so often people who are running successful careers, and they're also, running entrepreneurship on the side because nothing feels certain anymore. We are in a time, you bring up such a great point. People used to know what their careers were when they graduated college, if they graduated college. And I think we're seeing an evolution of people maybe deciding college isn't in their future, which is totally fine, because it really just is your willingness to pivot and evolve and be uncomfortable and be comfortable being uncomfortable, which sounds like an oxymoron.
Yeah, totally. Well, and it makes me think so. We have 4 boys, obviously. Our older 2 are now 16 and 18. And I have one who chose not to go to college. And he's doing instead investments and learning how to invest in homes. And he did a whole program around that. And then I just took the 16-year-old on his first college visit this week. So it's there's all kinds of options for them out there, but they're choosing different, especially Escher. It's he chose something different. I remember when he first brought this up a couple of years ago, I don't want to go to college. And we were like, what? It took us a minute, to wrap our heads around it and go oh, actually people can do whatever they want to do now. It's just a different world. And I don't know, I was just thinking, you know, in one of my seasons as an entrepreneur, because I've kind of gone back and forth between corporate life and being an entrepreneur. In one of those, you know, couple year seasons, there was a time where I had started a coaching business. I was doing some coaching, some in-person events, and I was consulting with some businesses. And I was like, okay, this is going to be great. You know, like I had some things rolling and it seemed really awesome. But it's like all of a sudden, maybe a couple coaching clients, you know, pull back, or like my biggest contract, they were like, we can't afford to do this anymore. Our company is suffering. And like just things like that would happen. And I remember being like, okay, this is obviously a moment where like, this isn't working anymore, you know? And really it was like a matter of a couple of months where I just felt like all the wheels are falling off this thing. But a couple months later, I got a call that like I didn't even initiate and got the biggest contract I'd ever had, you know? And it's like, if I had not waded through that process, it really would have changed the trajectory of that next season, you know? And it was terrible. Like it was terrible wading through that. I hate it, but it's also like just, it is a part of it. And I'm glad I didn't give up on it yet, you know?
It can go with so many things in life too. And I'm glad you didn't give up on it either, right? I feel like you gain so much wisdom and strength every time you go through those challenges. And it can be even life answers. Like where's my next move? Is this where our, you know, family's supposed to be? Are we supposed to plant our roots here? And there's so much uncertainty, it seems like, in every decision. I mean, even for us, when we were looking at a daughter, another child, sorry. We're looking at, do we have another child? It seemed very unclear. And then, you know, you just have to be comfortable with the unknown and the waiting. And I feel like I use my faith for that a lot. Like, you know, lean not on your own understanding. I feel like I always have that comfort and confidence that no matter what, things are always going to work out and they're going to be good. And I think so often we may take the wrong path, but then we course correct. And I think there's ways to do that, right? When you're on a path and it doesn't feel good, I think you have to ask yourself all these questions. Is this bringing out the qualities in me that are good? Is this helping me grow to be the person that I want to be? Or does this feel like I'm out of alignment? Is this having a negative impact on my family? I think there's so many things that we have to ask ourselves before we pivot.
Yeah. One thing I always ask myself, or I have in seasons of transition, and I would say this was even more true early in career when we were doing ministry and making big decisions about, like, if you walk away from something like that, it's like, it's your community, it's your job, like it's a lot of things. And also for us, that meant multi-state moves and all kinds of things, you know, but I would ask myself, like, kind of like, am I done here? Like, is there anything else that I need to bring to this circle of people that I have not yet brought? Or do I feel like I've given everything that I can give? And I think that's a good question for anybody listening to ask yourself, like, do you feel like you've given everything you can give? Or is it, you know, do you have a little more you need to give and you just need to hold on? Because I can also think back to times in business where I was ready to be done way before I felt like I was released to step away, you know? Right. And it was like, there was just something more, maybe one more person I needed to impact. It could be that small, or just a message that I needed to drop to that group of people, or something I needed to learn even, because there's also that side, right?
There is that side. And I think sometimes it comes from outside of your comfort zone, right? Working in your strengths. We were talking about this too, which I loved. Like, you helped me through something that I wasn't seeing, because I was like, yeah, but that time I did that, I was actually out of my comfort zone. But you were like, yes, but you were working within your strength, because I think those can sound really contradicting, right? Like somebody says, oh, work in your strengths. If it's not in your strength, then don't do it. But then sometimes it feels uncomfortable, but it can also be a tactic within your strength. But I remember a path that I thought was kind of placed in front of me that wasn't really the end goal, but it was timely, right? It was a situation, I was in transition, and it was somebody called me about an opportunity that wasn't perfect, but it was timely. And I had to trust, like, that was divine, you know, intercession that was giving me an opportunity to do something that was going to work for our family in the interim. It may not be perfect, but that there was something on that journey that I was there for. And I really didn't figure it out for a while. And I remember my first assignment there was to talk about mindset. And that was the one thing that I really probably didn't even want to talk about. I was like, really? I'm going to have have to go do a training on mindset. This is going to be awesome. And coming off of loss, we lost our son in May of 2016, and having been an entrepreneur and working through that loss. And I know that that's something I can share that helps other people, because there's a lot of things that can get in your way with life, like things not going right, challenges, obstacles, whatever. But I also knew that I couldn't talk about mindset unless I talked about my own personal journey. And I so often don't want to talk about my own personal journey because it's just, immediately going to make people sad. But I also knew that I had to be true and authentic to myself. Mm-hmm. And so I had to, I got up on that stage and I walked everyone through my journey of my mindset and my story, and how mindset was what carried me through, mindset and my faith. I cannot not credit that, but it was such a huge part of my journey to know that like my mindset was what was going to keep me getting up every day, putting my makeup on so I didn't fall into a deep depression, and know that, I had to keep choosing life, and that, we had to do things for our family. So the mindset piece was just really huge. And so knowing that, sharing that, and watching that transform other people's lives, that I was coaching during that process. I think that was why I was on that specific assignment, was just, to have that 20 minutes for everybody to hear my story when I really wasn't wanting to share it. And I know that the impact of that moment wasn't necessarily about me, but it was about how I could make an impact. So I took a really long time to share that, but it's not always about us either.
No, I think that's so good. And I just I'm so impressed when I think back to the fact that you were able to hold your business together, walking through all of those things and everything, and the move even after, like everything you guys walked through, that you were able to get yourself back up, and do that through mindset. And then I love that it's just almost ironic, but that it's not, that's the first thing that you were asked to talk about and stand up, and it could have been easy for you because you're a professional. You could have gotten up and just faked it.
Right.
You could have just, here's, Maxwell's irrefutable laws of leadership, right, or what, there's anything that you could have shared up there, but instead you shared authentically. And I think that's key for people, being authentic about where you are in the season you're in. And most of the time, I don't think we know the purpose behind the season until it's hindsight. Yeah. I think of, after an 11+ year career, I made a big jump and stepped away to take another role. And you won't see this one on my LinkedIn. You won't find it on my resume, but I stepped out to take this other role. And, I flew down to the headquarters of this company for a week and went to conferences and, met with the executive team and spent probably multiple hours with the owner and CEO, and just thinking, okay, this is my next big thing, my next big move. And this is going to be awesome. I had a great bonus structure, just was so excited about the whole thing, and got down there, and I knew within the first 24 hours, this is not it, and I had just walked away from this long career that I could have easily just stayed for longer until I figured something else out. And I knew right away that it wasn't it. And it escalated to the point within a couple of days that I just was I can't even stay till I find something else, And so I was in that role for 1 week. 1 week. I think that's probably my record for shortest. But, I joke about that I like quitting because because it took a lot of courage for me, first of all, to step away from that after 1 week without having a backup plan, and nothing else that was going to support my family, that was going to advance my career. I had no plan. And I just knew it was one of those stop signs, punch in the gut, where it wasn't even a choice. I was I cannot continue this any farther. I got to go home and I got to figure something else out, which then launched me into starting coaching, that season of entrepreneurship, that really I had no time to prepare for, and just jumped in. I mean, I put together a leadership course in about 3 weeks, recorded it, pushed it out. I was just, when you're in that position, you just do whatever you can to make it happen. It's that sudden, pivot that you make.
When you're grinding from dawn to done because your vision demands it, your body needs more than motivation. It needs real health infrastructure. That's why the Healthy Hustle is powered by Immunotec, a leader in immune health research for over 4 decades. With patented science focused on glutathione production, the body's master antioxidant, Immunotec delivers clean label, vegan-friendly support for your immune system, energy, recovery, and overall performance. So whatever your training session, pitch meeting, or creative sprint looks like, trust your body to keep pace. Because the hustle doesn't wait and your health can't either. Visit Immunotec.com and take command of your immune advantage. Immunotec, the science of living better.
And I love the boldness to see, like, this is not it. This is not feeling good. And here's the thing, Marybeth, we knew each other at the time. I remember watching you launch your business. I was like, dang, that girl's got it all together. Look at her go. And so I had no idea what that was coming from, what that stemmed from.
Yeah. Well, and I was really, really quiet about it. You know, it was embarrassing, you know, and it was just like, I felt like it was egg on my face, and it was just a lot of things. And also I didn't want to totally blast that company or the other people working there. Actually, the boss that hired me was amazing. It was more about the leadership and, you know, the people that were outside of him. But yeah, like that is funny because you're right. We push it out there. And even if I go back and look at posts during that time, and I was like so excited, like, oh my gosh, I'm starting all these things. And like, I was excited, but I was also scared to death. You know, gosh, I don't know. Like it's such an interesting time to look back on, and we have these seasons that are so uncertain. And one thing that I've been reminded of lately is they're not forever. They're just not forever. Like they're there, and you just think it's never going to end. And lately I'm like, because I feel like I'm in a bit of a waiting right now too, in some ways. And so I'm just like, you know what? Sometimes it's time for you to like get quiet and rest in the moment and figure out really what is next. And then just, I don't know, put one foot in front of the other.
I couldn't agree with that more. I think there's so much to that. Just knowing that there is something and not knowing what it is can be stressful if you let it. So how do you manage that on the day-to-day basis? Like, how do you manage the uncertainty and the unknown? Like, wow, something's really brewing. Something feels like it's about to be really big, but not really clear what that looks like.
Yeah. I mean, if we had the full answer to that question, it's
right?
Like the fountain of youth. But I think, you know, I'm reading this great book right now by Mark Batterson called Gradually Then Suddenly. And the whole premise behind that is like, we work stuff out gradually, and then all of a sudden we're like, oh, how did I get here? We've arrived, you know, like not that we arrive, because we know that we don't, but you get to that place where like, it does feel like things are a little more settled sometimes for a moment. And then usually you go right back into something else because it's just part of life. But I think it's, even when you know something big is coming, but it's just not there and you don't have the full clarity, it's like, it's that gradual piece. It's the boring decisions. Like it makes me think of my husband, not that he's boring, but he's literally the most consistent person you've ever met. He does the same thing every day at the same time, like just, and he has like, he wasn't always that way. He made that a goal in his life to have all these habits that he lined up, and it's paying off for him. You know, like feels the best he's ever felt. Like he's doing great. So it's like those, and that's an inspiration to me because I hate doing the same thing all the time. To me, that's so boring, but I think it's good. Those little decisions that we make, whether it's, you know, you're building a business and you got to call one more person, you try to get one more sale, you know, if you're new, you're doing marketing, you're doing sales, you're doing HR, you're doing everything. And it's just one more day of doing everything that gets you that much closer to that suddenly moment.
I think so much of that, it is true. It comes out of left field sometimes. That's where it seems like nothing's really happening and then suddenly, but it's because of that forward progress each and every day. It makes me think of my son last night. He is 18. I think our sons they're a few months apart. And he is a senior in high school, and he has this Whatnot business where he's doing cards on Whatnot. And he had a loss with one of his shows like recently, and he's actually like analyzing that and just saying, you know, I don't even care if I lose again tonight, if I lose another $1,000, it's okay, because I think it's going to take those losses to get where I want to go. And it just kind of brings me back to that whole, wow, like that is so huge, because when you have a vision, which we're not there yet, we'll talk about that later, but mindset is what gets you through so much, right? Just knowing like it's going to be worth it and expecting challenges. because I think that's part of the process. Uncertainty is part of the process. We know it's going to happen. We know it's going to feel like, are we going right when we're supposed to go left? Are we supposed to be sitting and waiting? Are we supposed to put the gas on? Is this really the destination I'm aiming for? And I think so often when I've coached people, I've just, had them really look at it. Like, and if they're in a season of unclarity or uncertainty, is that goal, is what they're doing going to be something they're excited about in 5 years? Is it taking them to a path where they're like, yes, this is amazing. This is just really where I'm like, this is worth it. It makes everything worth it. Right. And if that's not the case, then I think then it's definitely probably not the one thing that's going to be giving you baby steps towards your final destination.
Yeah.
And another thing is, in that uncertainty, are you loving who you're becoming? And if you don't love who you're becoming, I think that's your first signal to stop dead in your tracks and get off the boat, right? Because that's not going to get you to your end goal. If you don't like who you're becoming in the process, then that's a quick redirect.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that trajectory is so key, right? Knowing like how we're growing as a person in the process, and then what we're pointed toward, because we know the middle. It's like, even if you're trying to like, you wish everything was just this straight up growth curve. In reality, it's this bumpy, kind of path that we take, and hopefully it's ending in an upward place that's closer to where we want to be. And I think about your son, and like, obviously we know that our frontal lobes aren't fully developed until we're like mid-20s. And I think it's even longer for boys. So there's this element in them of, they're not so scared because their brains haven't developed enough to be scared enough. And it's like, we almost need to borrow that crazy courage that they have, where it's like, when we first had our dream or a vision of what we wanted to do, and we had those moments of insane courage, we've got to tap back into that. Because I think when you are in the season of uncertainty, or you're in the dip, it's so easy to just be like, maybe I was wrong. Yeah. And to give up just a little too early, if we had just hung on just a little bit longer, we're that much closer to where we want to be.
I think it's this sense of reality becomes even greater, right? The risk becomes greater. Like, can I pay the mortgage if I do this? What's going to happen if this doesn't work? Then what does that look like for my family? And I think that those voices grow louder as the older you get. But I think if we could borrow that ambition from the 18, 20-year-olds, this generation they're seeing amazing things. They're seeing people go online and, making multi-year salary in a month or 2 months. And so they have a different ideal than people in our generation. And it's funny, like, I was talking with my esthetician about a month ago, and she was kind of sharing like, oh, it seems like my son thinks that, they can just do whatever and like get online and make a lot of money. This is what this generation thinks. And it's like, oh my gosh, they do, because they can. And so what if we could do that? I see so many women and men that are so scared of that unknown, that uncomfortable part that might be that barrier that's keeping them from going where they want to go, because they don't think they can do the online piece of it. Because let's face it, online isn't everything. If you can't take your business online, it's probably closed, right? So I think that's a fear and a barrier that's separating a lot of people from their dreams.
Yeah. And it makes me go, why are we so afraid of being uncomfortable that we would let go of what could be so much better? I think it's funny as a society when I think back, and it's like early America, everybody was an entrepreneur, right? Like, there wasn't like a bunch of places you could go get a job or whatever. Like, you had to be, whether you were farming or whatever you were doing, whatever trade, everybody was an entrepreneur. And that was just how the world worked. And I think we've gotten so like maybe spoiled or used to the idea that, oh, we can all create careers and do things where we don't have to do that. And that's okay. And it's great for many, many people that they'd prefer it and they thrive in it. But then there's like, how many of us should be entrepreneurs that maybe aren't, because of fear, because we don't want to be uncomfortable, because we don't want to like maybe cut the budget back a little bit and eat out less, or whatever it would take for you, to like just take that step. It's like, we're so afraid of it. And I think at the same time, I think we're bored because we don't take risks like that. And so you see people like trying to find ways to be uncomfortable. So you see like cold ice plunge things, and you see like, you know what I'm saying? It's like, we're looking for ways to do that, because sometimes we're unwilling to do that in some of the biggest things we could do it in, big parts of life.
Well, and I think also when people find themselves in a situation they're not using their skill set that they've like gone to college for, then they start to feel like they're failing. You know, like, oh, what am I doing with myself even? Like, I'm not, you know, like I know so many people are uncomfortable in their jobs and they don't know how to break out from beyond that because it seems so different than what they imagine themselves doing. And also not having the bandwidth. Bandwidth is a big thing to be able to think bigger and dream bigger.
Yeah. And sometimes it's worth taking a step back, taking a different role to give yourself that bandwidth to create. You know, for so many people, it's writing a book, it's starting some kind of side business, it's selling cards on Whatnot, you know, whatever that is. But sometimes it takes that temporary setback. Not sometimes, most of the time. It takes a temporary setback in income, in, you know, pace of life and what you're doing, like doing things that are outside of your strengths temporarily so that later you can do more things in your strengths to get there, right? It's just part of the process. It's inevitable. It's not something we get to choose. There's waiting. There's like tough seasons, but we don't get there unless we go through them.
That's so true. I think sometimes when we aren't sure what to do, but we're not finding joy in what we're doing, then that's another big indicator that this is not right. I can think back personally. It was a couple years ago. I was in a position where I knew when I took it, it was not the final, right? It was a blessing at the time, but it was becoming so different from me working in my strengths. And it was literally sucking the life out of me. And I felt so stressed every day. It was working very differently than I ever had before, in multiple capacities at once. And I felt like I had no room to think, no bandwidth to myself. And then by the time everybody was coming home, it was just stressful. And it definitely didn't have the path. I didn't see a path. And I didn't see that, you know, it was really going to get me to any goal I had. And when my husband and my kids started noticing, I thought, this is definitely my sign. Like this is time for me to move on. Like it is not aligned with my peace. Like I had no peace and my peace was very disturbed. Not that, you know, it wasn't anything with people in general. It was a complete misfit for what really sets me on fire with where I can grow, where I can really truly help people and move things. And so I had to quickly recognize that and move forward. And the thing is, then the next step, I made a quick wrong decision, like what I thought was next, because I was in such a hurry to move on to the next thing. I thought I had to do the next thing so fast. And so I jumped into something, actually, I almost jumped into something that was completely not right for me. I actually left that job, gave notice, and then was about to jump back into entrepreneurship and realizing that it was another misfit because I was trying to make a decision too quickly because I was leaving from a point of stress and like, this is not right, but I knew quickly I had to do something. And it just felt when I felt like it was still not aligning, that was another quick, tough decision to make is like, whoa, before you go here and start, you know, blasting it out, this is not it either. And then having to have that conversation with my husband, that was not fun. Be like, oh, I did it again, you know, but oops, I did it again. And so I think that was one of those times where it was like, wait, I have to start really listening. Like if it doesn't feel good, I have to just know that from the get-go and not trying to make something fit into a box just because timing needs it. Timing is part of the process. Timing might happen in a week, 2 weeks, 6 months, 6 years. But I think I wasn't wrong in leaving that position behind because it was not good, right? It was causing a lot of unsettled. Maybe I should have done it a little differently, but we learned from that, right? And I think everything leads you to the next piece. And then I feel like I was able to make an impact there. And then the next thing that came along was what brought us back together.
Yeah. I love it. I know. I think none of us want to jump without being able to see what's on the other side of the ravine, but many times we are called to do that and it happens. And yeah, it's like you say the time could be 2 weeks, 6 months, like whatever that is, it's usually one day longer than what we want to tolerate, you know? But earlier we talked a little bit about like getting quiet and really thinking through, how do we know when it's a full on stop sign, or it's like okay, press through a little bit longer. You have a little bit more you need to bring to the space. And I think really not just getting quiet and listening inside our head, but listening to our bodies can be a really important piece of that. And it makes me think, you know, I was same as what you just said. I was in a role where I didn't have people issues. I actually loved so much of what I was doing, but it was just way more travel than I really needed to be doing. And in a single month, I think I slept 7 nights in my own bed. In part because I had a family vacation, so to be fair, but I got to the end of that month, and that's when I started having these jaw issues, you know? And so now, like, it's been a really long time. I'm much better than I was, but it was like stress started showing up in my body. And I can think back to times when I had stomach problems, or I was overeating and feeling unhealthy. I couldn't find time to eat, and I was under eating and losing weight that I wasn't planning on, which usually I don't mind, but just like I can think back through those things, and it's like we've got to pay attention to those signs as well, and take care of our bodies the best that we can, even in the midst of the waiting and, you know, the seasons of uncertainty. We can't just wait until we feel like doing those things. We've got to make it a part of the journey too, you know?
Such a great point where your body was acting out. I think back where I've been misaligned and I recognized it. I was getting sick all the time. I was catching everything all the time. And I think your body is operating from that position of stress. So you're susceptible to everything, right?
Yes. I'm like cold sores. Like I'm thinking of all the things that pop up when you have extreme stress. And it's just like your body is like, hello. Like you see those, you know, you see the signs. And I think even in the posture and the way that you sit, are you like gripping? Are you hunching? Are you closed off? Or are you like open and excited about what's happening and what's next, you know, or even just like ready to tolerate whatever the uncertainty. So I think paying attention to where you find yourself is really key as it relates to the season that you might find yourself in. So I think we're going to dig farther into that a little bit in the next episode.
I think so too.
Okay, I hope that you identified with something we talked about in today's episode. So make sure you like and subscribe, share it with a friend. We can't wait to dig more in our next episode.